today we're going to talk about Abraham and his path in life. And I'd like to ask about a spiritual state called Abraham. And even though that we know that in the Bible, in the Tanakh, on the one hand, it tells us about spiritual states that occurred in the roots, on the one hand. On the other hand, we know that also historic events and different actions correspond to what happened in the roots, that things that happen to different characters in different places, because we know that a branch, a root, at least once, must manifest in its branch. And we want to ask you, as a Kabbalist, what is this state called Abraham? What does a person who ascends to this degree, what does he feel? Dr. Laitman, unfortunately, I can't tell you. From my personal experiences, I have not reached or achieved such a degree. But Abraham is a man. If he's called a man, well, better let's call Abraham a spiritual degree that a person can attain when he gets from the Creator everything that has to come from the Creator to the created beings. Mushi. It says that Abraham is Hesed, mercy, what a person starts loving everyone. Dr. Laitman. From the Creator comes Keter, Chochmah, and Bina, the first three Sfirot, or emanations, like that it comes from the Creator to the created being, and the highest degree given to the created beings exists in the Sfirah of Chesed, and Abraham, he represents the Sfirah of Chesed. This is his main quality. Michael, what is this quality? A person, what kind of attitude does he have towards the world, towards other people as a result of this quality? Dr. Laitman. It's pure chasadim, mercy, meaning that he's merciful, that he's included in everyone, that he feels everyone, and by no means does he want anything out of it for himself, but he raises everyone above himself as more important than himself. In short, the quality of Chesed. Host, I know that he was the 20th generation since Adam, who lived more than 5,000 years ago, and there are 20 generations of sages. Why does it talk in the Tanakh about this number, 20 generations? Dr. Laitman. It is the influence of the Creator over the created beings, and therefore it's stated. It includes Adam, Noah, and so on and so forth, all the degrees up until Abraham. Host, why 20? Why not 17? Dr. Laitman, well, there are different opinions that these are 10 sfirot of direct light, 10 sfirot of reflected or returning light. There are different opinions. Tell you the truth, I can't really say anything clearly, personally about this. I think that, as always, any higher spiritual manifestation comes down through the right line, the left line, and in the middle between them achieves a degree called Abraham. What we can say is that in relation to the Creator, Abraham is the uppermost point, quality, degree from the created being to the Creator. There can't be higher than that. A person can't rise above Abraham, above this quality. I'm not talking about the person. We're talking about qualities. Host, so if we're talking about qualities, then it is the closest quality to the Creator that a person discovers as himself. Dr. Laitman, yeah? Host, so we know that there are many different stories related to Abraham, and now as I said, we'd like to shoot a film about it. And Abraham, he lived here in Israel, even though that back then it was called Canaan. And even before that, everything starts in ancient Babylon. And by the way, Babylon, Bavel in Hebrew, comes from the concept of itarbevut, the mixture, entanglement of languages. But it says that back then all nations spoke the same language. This is what the book of Genesis begins with. And it's interesting. What does it mean? No one ruled over anyone else. How could that be? What is this all about from the spiritual point of view? Because in history, clearly we understand that before that, there were tens of thousands of different clans and tribes that fought each other. Dr. Laitman, no, this was a kind of period between the two rivers where actually, where they existed, there were no contradictions because everything existed abundantly. There was fish in the rivers as much as you want. The land was very fertile. They grew every possible thing on it. They didn't experience any lack of anything. They didn't even have any special feeling of envy toward each other or competition, and everything was fine. It was a period. Host, so it says that everyone was equal and no one ruled anyone else. What does that mean, Dr. Laitman? It means that this is how they existed. There are such periods in different places on earth where different tribes or people living there live in peace in a kind of conservative state.
Я где-то читал у вас, что вы говорили, что это говорит о нулевом или корневом уровне эгоизма.
I heard you once say that it has to do with the root level of the ego, Dr. Laitman. Yes, there was a very small ego. It only started developing in mankind back then. Actually, when we talk about ancient Babylon, we're talking about it as the initial state of mankind, where people still did not feel this ego inside themselves, a thirst. Host. What is this root level? Because people, like animals, fought for territory. Dr. Laitman, was no need to do nothing. Everything was abundantly. It was such a period in time where everything existed abundantly. You have water, land, crops. There were no big egoistic desires. There was enough fish, enough bread, enough crops, enough of everything. Host. And inside a person, what is this condition? Where all people are equal. Inside a person, what is that? Dr. Laitman. That ego needs nothing more than to eat. It's an animal state, a very initial state. The very initial state of man is an animal state. Host. So the desires have not yet developed in a person, Dr. Laitman, where he has only animate desires. Host. And afterwards appeared the king Nimrod. Nimrod in Hebrew from the word mered. And it starts ruling inside a person. What is that, Dr. Laitman? There are several vectors of human development here. Nimrod, on the one hand, as the ruler, as a very cunning ruler. On the other hand, people became more aggressive toward each other, more demanding, egoistic. And besides that, Terah, who was Abraham's father, who actually already started let's say, differentiation of gods. He made different statures. And he told the Babylonians that each of these statues represents a certain god, that you have to pray to them, light candles for them. Host, inside a person, what goes on, Dr. Laitman? Some unseen forces that exist in a person and that a person wants to somehow understand, conquer. All that exists in us. And we have the desire to somehow understand them, work with them. Host, it says that Nimrod was... what does it mean where a person discovers this quality inside a person that rebels against the peace and wants to rule and govern? What is that? That he was a strong rebellion. Dr. Laitman, meaning that he wants to get people out of their egoistic, primitive state and to elevate them further, meaning the ego starts burning, competition, the desire to conquer, acquire. This is what Nimrod's kingdom represents. Host, who did he rebel against, Dr. Laitman? There's no one to rebel against besides nature itself. That pacified people. He didn't want that. He wanted to have egoistic, competitive people so that they will advance, go further, and will advance his kingdom. Host, it's a positive quality. It's like our child when he's developing. We want for him to compete, to develop. Dr. Laitman, he can compete for not being an egoist and not to be a conqueror in everything over everyone. Competitions can go the other way too. So Nimrod is a negative quality in a person, Dr. Laitman. Yes, to this day, this quality in mankind simply develops at an ever-growing speed. Host, then it says that Abraham started observing the entire process that is going on of the development of the ego, and they started building the Tower of Babel. We know about the mixture of tongues that happened later on. Also, it simply means that they stopped understanding each other. They spoke one language, but they didn't understand each other. Two egoists can't understand each other. And inside a person, what does it mean that he stops understanding himself? People actually don't understand each other, says Dr. Laitman. They don't understand themselves either, to the measure to which they don't understand others. Meaning, turns out that a person lives without understanding why, what for, in relation to what. Gradually, to that extent to which he becomes an egoist, he moves away from nature. He positions himself in opposition to nature, against nature. And this is what he gets, that actually he's losing on both sides. So again, when a person builds the Tower of Babel inside himself, what happens inside of him? What is the state? Dr. Laitman, when he builds the Tower of Babel, this is what Nimrod pushed them to do. It's in order to increase their ego, meaning the ego has to reach a state where it prevails, is in control of all other human qualities. Host, then we know that the generation of Abraham is called the generation of separation, of strife, dor hapalga in Hebrew. At that time, we know that there were those that followed Abraham, tens of thousands of people that were called Israel, a kind of nation, and all the rest were called the nations of the world, those that didn't go with Abraham. So Abraham, on the one hand, he founded a nation that came to know the Creator. They revealed the Creator inside themselves, this is the quality that they've acquired, and all the other people, which are the rest of the nations of the world. What is that inside a person? Dr. Laitman, the division into two types of desire, meaning aspiring to come closer to one another, which is the altruistic quality. And this is exactly how it became revealed. And aspiring, or to the contrary, suppression over people, which is an egoistic quality. Meaning Abraham, he actually founded the division of mankind into two groups. A tiny, miserable group of egoists that wanted, a tiny poor group of egos that wanted to rise above themselves. That's why they were called Jews, Israelites that wanted to reach spirituality, and the rest of the world. So there are the egoistic, corrected egoistic desires in a person that can already be used, and the others that aren't corrected and that you can't use. So these are two different kinds of desires inside a person. Okay. Now, in your books, it says that Abraham was the first man to raise Malchut to Bina in 40 years. Well, there's Kabbalah already, but still there's a desire to understand. Why does it say that when he was 40, he attained the Creator? Dr. Laitman, the quality of reception, it precedes everything. It is the egoistic will to receive. You can correct it only if you elevate it to the degree of Bina. The degree of Bina is, it's called 40. That we can rise to the degree of Bina as if in 40 years, 40 degrees, steps. Actually, this is all very conditional. It's symbolic because you can also count it differently. So there's nothing unique about it, but the number 40, you meet it a lot in the Torah. There's also the number 3, that Abraham started contemplating the meaning of life at the age of 3. What is 3? It's not an age, obviously. Dr. Laitman, obviously it's not an age. You can say that it's a spiritual age, maybe. And then a person gets the opportunity to receive, to give from these two counter states to build the middle line. Host, so 3 is the middle line, Dr. Laitman. Yes, host, the forming of the middle line. Okay, and then after he reached the age of 40, when he got this quality of mercy, he started disseminating this method to everyone else, and as it says by Kabbalists, by Maimonides, that tens of thousands of people followed him, and of course he had to run away, and he had to run away from Nimrod to the north of Israel, somewhere next to a place called Rosh Nikra, and everything else that occurred on the land of Israel, which was called Canaan. Obviously, every name has a certain meaning. Canaan, Canaan. Dr. Laitman. Yeah, that's the northern part of the land. It's the north of Israel. And there he meets other people and also shows them his method, meaning, host, Canaan, it comes from the word kniya, purchase, how to acquire or to subordinate yourself. Kniya from the word lachnia, to subordinate for yourself. What does that mean inside a person, Dr. Laitman? Altogether, there's the quality of Abraham that constantly yields to the Creator. If he achieves such a state in his advancement, land, eretz, from the word ratzon, desire, and he attains such a desire where he can more and more yield, subordinate himself. That means that he came to the land of Canaan, host, and also it's known that Abraham comes from ancient Babylon to Canaan, then goes back down to Egypt, then goes back to Canaan, then goes to Beersheba, Sodom, Gomorrah. All of these movements inside a person, it's just a change in states, Dr. Laitman. Of course, this is exactly what happens inside a person. This is the important thing. Host, and as a result, there are also physical movements, etc. Dr. Laitman, the meaning, or what it actually talks about, is the internal movements. Host. And it says that Abraham, he taught everyone, he went from place to place, not far from here. There's his tent where he used to sit. So it says that he sat in his tent, telling everyone to the measure to which they could understand, depending on who listened. And as it says, he developed this principle. What is it, Dr. Laitman, of the one God, that the upper positive force, the quality of bestowal, is what governs the world, and this is exactly the quality that we have to bow to, and we have to cultivate this quality inside us. Host. It says that Abraham was forced to leave Babylon to Canaan. He fled Nimrod. And then it says that there was hunger here, and one way or another he had to go down into Egypt. What does it mean? Dr. Laitman, that he could not fill himself in the quality of bestowal, and he could not acquire the qualities of the Creator, reach equivalence of form with the Creator only through the quality of bestowal. And therefore, he had to open his desire both to egoistic qualities, so that in a certain combination between the egoistic and altruistic qualities, the quality of reception and the quality of bestowal, he will be able to correctly become like the Creator. Host, it says that 70 people went down to Egypt, even though that we know that there were tens of thousands. Dr. Laitman, well, first of all, in the days of Abraham, there were truly few people. The Torah always speaks not of the quantity of heads, but the intensity of these souls. Therefore, there's no need to think that these souls have the number 70, it's always mentioned. Why? Dr. Laitman, it's a complete number, because our soul consists of 70 parts, and if these 70 parts come together and direct all of their particular and general aspirations and efforts to the keto, the peak of the degree of their connection, then that is whole and complete work, a whole and complete soul, and the connection with the Creator in the connection of these qualities, connection with the Creator. Host, Lot was always next to Abraham. What is this quality always going around with Abraham? Dr. Laitman, you understand, spiritual qualities, they always consist of positive and negative parts. Just like it is impossible to determine anything, attain anything, be directed towards everything if you don't have two opposite qualities. So Lot is Abraham's opposite quality, and by that he helps Abraham to reveal himself, to express himself, meaning thanks to Lot, Abraham becomes revealed, realizes himself. Host, but then at a certain stage, they have to part one way or another. Dr. Light. obviously, because afterwards, so it says that if you go right, I go left, etc., meaning there they part. Host. And what was the purpose? Obviously, it's an allegory that they walk around with a herd. And what does it mean that a person inside himself is a herdsman? Dr. Laitman, these are animate desires on the animate level that are closer to the spiritual desires that represent an animal like a sheep, for example. Host, what does it mean that I heard a flock of sheep inside myself, Dr. Laitman, that you want to develop inside yourself desires that eventually will be desires of love, bestowal, etc., Host, there are many stories related to Abraham. We can't touch them all and not chronologically, but one of the stories is very interesting. It's Sodom and Gomorrah, where the Creator tries to destroy these cities, and the Creator wants to destroy them, and Abraham tries to protect them. What is this? What are these relations called? Sodom, mine is mine, yours is yours. What's the problem in these relations, Dr. Laitman? Well, these relations are completely anti-altruistic. Mine is mine, yours is yours. It's not a crime. It's not the quality of egoism in its most explicit manifestation. But if everything's mine is mine, yours is yours, I can't correct anything, and therefore this quality is considered the complete opposite of the Creator that you have to get rid of. Host, but for our ego, it's the most comfortable state, Dr. Laitman. Well, for the ego, it's not comfortable because you're not taking from another. You're saying yours is yours, mine is mine. Host, yeah, I don't touch you, you don't touch me, no wars, no nothing, Dr. Laitman. But even better if I can take what's yours. Host, well, that's a problem. If I'm stronger, then I'll take from you later on, and so on, Dr. Laitman. True. But precisely because it is to remain in this state, it's a completely dead end, not I don't take from you, you don't take from me, mine is mine, yours is yours. There's no correction in it, and therefore this quality is insufficient in terms of attaining the goal. Host. So this quality in a person is opposed to the purpose itself, the goal of creation. And that's why the Creator destroyed these cities. So it says. What's interesting is that these cities are somewhere in the area of the Dead Sea. We'll film there. And what's interesting is that you have the salt pillar there, which is Lot's wife. When they ran away, when the cities were destroyed, she turned back, meaning what? Dr. Laitman did not want to part with her previous egoistic life, and therefore turned into a pillar that manifests the consistency and persistency inside of your own desires that can't be corrected because they are of this type, like the salt pillar. Host. The Dead Sea is 400 meters lower than the sea level, and 400 has a certain meaning in the wisdom of Kabbalah. Dr. Laitman, well, probably. Host. 400 is like a complete number. Dr. Laitman, yes, the complete depth of the Malchut. Host. Complete depth of the egoism that later on has to be somehow corrected. Dr. Laitman, yes? And then possibly it will be filled from within with clean water, pure water. Host, on one of our shows, you said that even though that today it's a desert, it could really flourish. Dr. Laitman, you'll have everything there, fish and whatnot, everything, including everything. If you just add to that quality, the quality of bestowal, then in the connection between these qualities, you'll have there, I don't know, you'll have whales swimming there. Host, well, that's externally wise, meaning if we'll correct this quality inside ourselves, externally wise, this can appear this way. Well, historians will later study this. And Abraham, he's walking in the desert. What is a desert? Inside a person. Dr. Laitman, nothing to nourish yourself with, nothing to fulfill your quality of connection with others with, of bestowal, of love, no way to realize yourself. That's the quality of a desert. Host, you can't fulfill your ego or your desire to bestow, Dr. Laitman, depending what kind of desert. Host, but when we're talking about a desert, it's a certain kind of emptiness inside a person, regardless whether it comes from not being to fill myself egoistically or fulfilling the Creator. Dr. Laitman, actually, yes. Host, also, when they walked in the desert, Abraham was all the time looking for wells. Why was it so important to him, Dr. Laitman? Sources of water, and water is the light of Chasadim, meaning the quality of bestowal, the quality of love, without which nothing can flourish. And therefore, everything comes down to that, to water, to a well, to the quality of bestowal. Host, we'll go to the city of Beersheba, and this is the source of wisdom. What wisdom are we talking about? Dr. Laitman, precisely when they find water in the desert, it is the source of wisdom, because the desert shows how much a person aspires to find it, and when he finds it, then there is an outburst of wisdom, an eruption of good intentions. Host, what wisdom are we talking about? Dr. Laitman, about how to become like the Creator. Host, this is wisdom, how to become like the Creator, Dr. Laitman, and only. Host, thank you very much. Many different terms, new ones. Abraham, he lived for a long time, and many stories are related to him. Dr. Laitman, what can you do? He is the very foundation of our world. Without him, I don't know how could the world exist altogether. Precisely thanks to Abraham appeared the qualities, the different religious qualities of interactions, relationships. The very beginning, he was a great philosopher. He was a great sage. Host, he divided the world into two worlds. The one is Israel, those that aspire for the Creator, and the other one are the nations of the world. Dr. Laitman, yes. Host, how would it be possible to show all of this? Do you think that it's okay, on the one hand, to show historic places that are related to how Abraham moved around physically, and on the other hand, an explanation about a person's inner qualities? Dr. Laitman, it doesn't matter. I think that if you show what it talks about in the Torah, in the Bible, then it would be good were it to be physically shown, and alongside with it, there would be a meticulous, vivid explanation of what does it mean. Host, so I stand in the desert, showing the desert, well, not much to see, but still. And I explain what is a desert inside a person, where he aspires for the quality of wisdom to attain the Creator, etc. Thank you very much. Until next time, thank you.